Just Energy with naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theories that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swing of a pendulum to the waves in the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. In the same way, things such as rocks and minerals vibrate very slowly and at speeds that are imperceptible to us. Living things such as plants, animals, and man vibrate faster and appear to be alive. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is if we take everything in our own universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita as she explores questions such as, what are we made of? Why do we get sick? How can I live a more balanced and whole life? Call in and talk to her and her thought-provoking guests. Send us your questions and get the help you need to move beyond any obstacles or challenges that may be affecting your life, right from the source. So stay tuned and explore your possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Oh my God, we have a fantastic lineup. In the first hour, we're going to be talking to David Sereda about his new movie, Quantum Communication. And you know, the name of this show is Just Energy, and what we're going to be talking about is energy, 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 and the makeup of our universe based on energetic levels. And then in the second hour, we're going to be talking to Tom Walker about another energy topic, The Force is With You. So we're having an energy kind of show today. So before I bring David on and we start talking about his movie, it's like, I have to tell you, I watched the movie this week and I loved it. And if you're interested in energy and how we interact on energetic levels on this planet, I would highly recommend the movie. So let me tell you a little bit about David, and let's get him on because it's fascinating stuff. So David grew up as a UFO enthusiast, never living in doubt of the phenomena that has swept the world since the Roswell incident in 1947. His interest in space, religion, philosophy, astronomy, and science had led him on a career in related fields. He has worked deeply in high technology, on environmental and humanitarian issues, and as a professional photographer for over 20 years. He has studied world religions, science, physics, and paranormal psychology for over 25 years. And so please welcome to Just Energy Radio, David Sereda. Hi, David.
Hi, Just Energy.
It's all Just Energy.
It's all.
and your new movie, Quantum Communication, speaks directly to that point.
It does. You know, I mean, I want to kind of open a thought for everybody, and that is that, you know, in physics, when people think of physics, they think of, you know, these little mathematicians and kind of nerdy little guys and women running around with calculators. But where this all kind of started, the father of the word quantum or quantum physics was Max Planck, the German physicist, who wins the Nobel Prize in physics. And he gives birth to quantum theory in 1918. And Einstein, who now is like this giant, you know, iconoclast, he was just a lowly patent clerk in Switzerland, filling out patent applications, and actually had failed at school. And he started to develop these incredible theories in physics, and it was because of Max Planck's openness to somebody outside of the box, somebody who didn't have a PhD. He actually read Einstein's theories. But Einstein actually said, and this is a quote, "As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter," this is a Nobel Prize winner, "I can tell you as the result of my research about atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system in the atom together. We must assume behind this force is the existence," get ready, of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. So Max Planck, this great Nobel Prize winner, the father of quantum theory, is telling you that this isn't just a theory. This is after years and years of studying the orbits of subatomic particles, that the greatest force, the force that tells everything what to do, is conscious, and it's an intelligent mind, which means the universe is intelligent. Later, when Einstein is adopted by Planck, and Einstein eventually wins the Nobel Prize for explaining the photoelectric effect, which is the conversion of light or electromagnetism back into physical matter, Einstein says anyone who becomes seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that there is a spirit manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of man. Now, what's so exciting to me about this is you have two of the greatest Nobel Prize winners of all time who are both telling you from the beginning that the universe is conscious. And not only is it conscious, this conscious mind is the most profound force among the forces. So how literally, I mean, you're talking about the early 1900s. We're talking about almost 100 years later. Physicists today don't talk about this. They don't say that the universe is intelligent. We have four physical forces. We have the strong force, which holds everything together at the subatomic level, holds atoms together, and then we have gravity with the most obvious force. You throw an apple up in the air and it falls on the ground. And then you have electromagnetism, which is, light, radio waves, and all this stuff. And then you have what's called the weak force. So you have these four very physical, mechanical forces. So we've been taught by NASA and astronomers that this whole universe is just some kind of a machine that's operating against our will. Well, that's not true, because at the very, very beginning, when all of these great Nobel Prize winners convened at the Fifth Solvay Conference on Quantum Mechanics in Brussels, Belgium, in the very turn of the day in the early 1900s, late 1800s, they're talking about this consciousness phenomena. And then we go on to, the war, World War II, World War I and II emerge, and all these physicists have to put their minds on weapons. So Einstein, gives the tip. He writes the famous letter to Roosevelt in 1938, urging the fission of uranium to build a bomb. We get a bomb, and all of the emphasis about the universe in physics is physical. It's about bombs, it's about explosions, it's about the Big Bang and the expanding universe. But their favorite subject, Einstein and Planck's favorite subject, and many, many other physicists, is the mind of the universe. So that's where don't many people, I don't want to say nowadays, but kind of correlate that force and that consciousness to quote-unquote God? Yeah, I mean, essentially, exactly. In a way, what Planck had started was scientific proof for the existence of God. But that research, the research that was done on the conscious force in the very early days, you're talking late 1800s, early 1900s, it was all just kind of buried and ignored. And when I interviewed in quantum communication Claude Swanson, who's a PhD in physics from MIT, our most prestigious university in physics, he's saying that they've known this all along, that they have to remove the minds of the researchers from the experiment because they know that their consciousness is going to affect the results. But he said there was actually a concerted effort at a government level to bury all of the evidence of such because they didn't want us, the people, to know how powerful our minds really are. So that's where it all starts.
Well, that's pretty fascinating. And so, I mean, we've had Dr. Amit Goswami on the show a couple of times, and we've kind of talked about, the conscious universe. But there's just a few people, contemporary physicists, that really are willing to step out on that branch. William Tiller, Bruce Lipton. I mean, a number of the people that you've had in the book or in the movie. But there aren't that many that are willing to, I hate to say stake their reputation on putting out that information, but at least they are.
Yeah, I know. I'm really grateful to the Bruce Liptons, the William Tiller, the Cloud Swanstons, Stanislav Ojak, and then you have, of course, the psychologist that we interview in the film. My father, Win Sarita, is one of the pioneers from Berkeley in the 1960s who started studying and going to India and practicing meditation and learning very, very advanced techniques in meditation to see if we could transform depression and other mental and emotional disorders by using these techniques. But now what you have are these psychologists merging with the scientists. You know, people like Gary Schwartz, for example, Harvard-Yale psychiatrist, has one of the most advanced consciousness studies labs in the nation, and he's doing experiments on the power of the mind. And then we had at Princeton University, of course, which is where Einstein taught, we have the Global Consciousness Project and Roger Nelson in my previous film, The Voice. So we see that there is an overwhelming body of data and knowledge, and there's an overwhelming number of scientists that are moving in this direction. But a lot of it comes from the resistance to the peer review system. You know, the peer review system is you get your PhD, or you're writing your thesis for your PhD, and the peer review says what they will accept your thesis to be about. And luckily, like for example, when my dad was writing his thesis in the 60s, he got to do a study on the super learning and health effects of deep relaxation and meditation on the body and on consciousness. So that was pretty advanced for its day, but now you have
pretty fringy.
It was fringy in its day. And now you're looking at, scientists like Tiller, who spent 30 years at Stanford University doing experiments on the power of the mind. And where, just to give people kind of an example, you really start with is, look at what a radio is. How do our thoughts transmit themselves like radio stations do? Well, a radio station uses, Tesla technology, which is you spin copper wire on a cylinder. I don't know how many of you remember building your first radio in elementary school or high school, and you wrap it around a little, kind of cylinder, and you put some little electrodes and diodes on there, and you basically can broadcast or receive a radio signal. Because when electricity spins in copper wire, it gives birth to radio waves or light waves, and you can tag human voices and music and these sort of things on radio waves. Television, we send pictures slightly higher in frequency than the radio spectrum. So it goes in, television is broadcast in the microwave spectrum, just a little bit higher in frequency than radio waves. When you get higher than microwaves, you get to infrared, which is visible red light, and then you get to the color red. And then you go all the way through the rainbow spectrum. Then you get to ultraviolet, near, far, and extreme, which are invisible to the human eye, and then you get to X-rays and you get to gamma rays. So that's the electromagnetic spectrum. Well,
but that still exists in the physical world. And as human beings, we can't. Well, I mean, unless you have braces, you can't listen to radio inside of yourself. And so, how do we, as human beings, do that? Send, receive, and assimilate information from the world.
Well, we work very similar to the way a radio station transmits information, the human voice or music, etc., on radio waves, and then it gets received, and then you're listening to it on your little radio. That's kind of like the way a radio station works. Well, the human body is an electrical system. This is one of the first things we do in the beginning of the movies. We teach you about the body electric. We have positive and negative ions running through our nervous system, which are bigger than electrons, which, electricity, imagine, this is a really simple explanation of what electricity is. You have copper wires, and you have electrons flowing through it, just like drops of water are going down a river. When those drops of water go down the river, they hit a paddle, and they cause the paddle or the little rotor to spin, and you produce electricity at Niagara Falls. So electrons move through wires the same way. They're just like little drops of water moving through a river. So when they hit your blender, they cause it to spin, just like water would do the same thing on a much grander scale. Well, the body runs something bigger than electrons. It's running ions. They're bigger than electrons, but they're the same. They're positive and negative charge. So we're electrical. And then a physicist named Fritz Albert Popp in the 1960s and 70s proved that the body transmits light particles in all of the spectra we know of, in the radio spectrum, in the infrared spectrum, in the color spectrum, the rainbow spectrum, and also in the invisible ultraviolet spectrum. And then he found in the 1970s that the transmissions of those biophotons were carrying intelligent information. He actually did experiments with plants, and he found out they were actually emitting auric or light energy and sending each other messages, just like we do on our little iPods and our computers and our cell phones. They're all talking to each other. There's this whole conversation going in the universe, not only between plants, but between humans psychically, and between humans and higher dimensional fields of intelligence in the universe, and then all the planets are all talking to each other. And so there's a whole dialogue going on out there that's invisible to our current publicly available technology and awareness. So what this all means is that we are always transmitting. So what William Tiller does at Stanford University in the early days is with another scientist, Elmer Green, they put a Qigong master in a chair, and they put copper plates on the walls below him and above him and on all four walls, right? And they have voltmeters attached to those copper plates. And when the Qigong master does his exercises, he transmits, like a little radio transmitter, energy in the form of invisible waves, and it hits the copper plates, which causes the copper plates, electrons in the copper plates to flow. And they measure the voltage. And the voltage spikes were massive, like 250 volt spikes. I mean, coming off the human body invisibly. I mean, this is incredible. This is scientific proof that we are constantly transmitting different amounts of information. Well, what I did in the last 2 years, I have done studies on over 600 individuals personally at different trade shows, and I measure people's body voltage. And, William Tiller said the average person has between 50 and 100 millivolts in their nervous system. And I found, at least the 600 people I tested, it was between 30 and 100 millivolts. And people with clinical depression, fibromyalgia, or nervous system disorders, they would have 30 or less millivolts in their nervous system. And so one of the things I did is I energized these stone pendants with harmonic code frequencies. And people wear them. And when they wear them, you can measure on the voltmeter, their voltage goes up. It gets higher. And then we did aura camera photography studies, and we found that the person's auras would get brighter just from wearing a stone pendant that's been energized by 5 quantum energy generators. It raises their vibration. How is this happening? Well, without going too much into that, because the benefits of raising your millivolts in your nervous system are very, very profound for your overall health. And in fact, I have medical doctors from top universities testing my pendants on their patients right now. What Tiller finds later on, which is conjunct to this, is that when people are in deep psychic states of consciousness or healing states, their voltage is higher in their body. So if someone were a healer and doing a hands-on healing session, their voltage would go much higher than the average person. And so the idea then is that as our voltage gets higher, we're transmitting more light, and light carries our personal energy signature, which is the architecture of our emotions, thoughts, and our structure out into the universe. So we are actually sending out signals all the time. But
I think people, yeah. I think that people, even though on a conscious level, many times don't realize it. Because as an example, it's like, you might go into work or the bank or whatever, and you walk up to somebody and you might just feel like they feel bad, or you might just have a thought or a feeling, about them that is not verbally communicated, but you're picking up that vibe off of them. And I think a lot of people don't realize that that is what you're talking about in their personal experience.
Well, yeah, now we know scientifically how it works. See, The reason it's good to know scientifically how consciousness transmits and how it works, and it gets much, much deeper in the film than this, but when you know how it works, you can build a repeatable, reliable, mantra in your life to understand that you are doing this. It is working whether you believe it or not. William Tiller goes on to do an experiment, which what I love about William Tiller is he does his experiments over and over and over again, hundreds of times, to make sure that it's not just chance, right? So it's like if you were inventing the automobile, which we did, you keep perfecting that mantra, that repetition of turning the key and everything works and the cylinders are running smoothly so that you get a really good end result. Well, so he does the same thing with consciousness. He does it hundreds and hundreds of times. And what he found was, this is utterly astounding. This is the secret to the law of manifestation right here, what I'm about to tell you, is they trap a perfect meditator's human intention with the intention to tell water, a sample of water in a glass or in a beaker, to raise its pH value by a factor of 1 or more, or lower it 1 or more. And they trapped that perfect thought because they found that they couldn't get a human to hold that thought for very long. You know how hard it is, like if you're going to think in the law of attraction that I want to attract my soulmate, for example, that you have all these images about them, and then an hour later you're like, nah, that's not really going to happen. I don't really, you start doubting, and then you change your mind about what you want, right? Well, so they get this perfect intention, and they trap it in a bioelectrical device called an IIED, which is in part fruit fly larvae, and it's a bioelectrical device that was developed to trap a thought. That's pretty amazing itself. I mean, that's quantifying consciousness right there, putting it in a little chip. And they would place that chip at a distance, regardless of whether the beaker of water was even 6,000 miles away from the transmitter chip. The pH of the water every single time, it took about 30 days to raise a full pH unit. That's a physical change. That's not telekinesis. That's not telepathy. That's telekinesis.
And I'm sure they take into account any kind of like evaporation, or any other things that potentially could raise the pH, from
what they do is they put it in a Faraday cage, so that no interfering radiation, nothing can have any influence on it. It's in a cage, so nothing. And what's amazing is it doesn't matter how far away you are from the target experiment, it always goes up. And then they tried lowering the pH with the intention, and sure enough, it lowered. But one of the first things they noticed about consciousness is if you were on your cell phone and you were in the basement of a car garage trying to talk to somebody, you lose the signal, right, because there's too much concrete. Well, consciousness doesn't care if there's a mountain of rock on the other side of the target. It goes right through it with no loss in signal quality. So that is, the implications of that are further astounding in the film. They're utterly astounding. But the first point
wasn't there some experiment with that Edgar Mitchell, the Apollo 14 astronaut, did too, that had to do with this long-distance, long-range communication?
Yeah, Mitchell, this was a fact brought to my attention by Cloud Swanson in his book, The Synchronized Universe, and that is that Mitchell had done this secret experiment where he had several psychics on the ground with those cards, with the wavy lines and the shapes. They were the type of cards that I'm trying to remember the name of the type of cards that they used. And there's over
those
50
psychic cards.
Yeah, those psychic cards. And he would put them in a certain sequence in order while he was on his spacecraft, heading back towards Earth. And sure enough, 2 of the psychics on the ground got them right. The sequence. Now, so what Mitchell documented was it didn't matter how far away you were either, whereas, again, if you're transmitting a message on somebody's cell phone, the signal gets weaker squared of the distance. There's a certain percentage that the signal fades, right? So you have to increase the strength of the signal if you want if you want more people to be able to hear it. Whereas the psychic force seems to, 1, reach the right person, the recipient, and the signal quality does not distort over distance.
So can we back up one quick sec?
Yeah.
Because you were sitting there talking about people's individual voltage, and some people are like between 30, I wrote it down somewhere. Anyway, between 30 and 60, but then, people like Qigong masters, theirs is higher. So are the people who are naturally carrying that higher voltage, are they able to, and I'll say, transmit stronger signals so that they can be more readily read kind of thing?
Exactly. I mean, one of the reasons I'm testing and doing experiments, and we sell these pendants, on voiceentertainment.net, is because if you wear one of these pendants, and you can clearly see on a voltmeter, your millivolts go way up. If someone's 100, I can get them to 1,000 or higher easily with one of these pendants, and you can see it. And you look at the aura on the aura camera, their aura is brighter because they have more energy flowing through their system, just like if you put more energy in a light bulb. So therefore, if you're sending out a thought, it's going to go out there and apply to the law of attraction with a more higher probability of getting good results. Whereas if your voltage in your body is very low, you're going to be sending out a very weak signal. Now, you don't necessarily have to wear a pendant. You can practice meditation. You can do breathing exercises. Even super athletes are able to get their voltage in their nervous system up to 2,000 millivolts. I mean, really, really primo athletes. So you see super athletes or, ballet dancers or psychics, they're always going to have, when they're in that activity, their voltage is going to be way higher than the average person. But people who are having a lot of challenges, whatever that may be with their nervous system, I have consistently seen a massive improvement when I'm able to raise their voltage. But now this is where it gets really interesting. When we think of the secret and the law of attraction, if you're sending out a thought like, because remember, it took 30 days every time or more for William Tiller's control, his target, the glass of water, to raise its pH value or lower it based on the human intention. It doesn't happen instantly, right? It took 30 days. And so that tells you this is the real secret I'm giving you to everybody right now who's listening, is that imagine you have a thought, you want something to manifest in your life, but, you only give it like 5 minutes, and then it's like, okay, let's see if it happens. And then it doesn't happen, you're like, I told you so, this stuff is a bunch of baloney. Well, the conscious force of the universe is probably the most powerful force, but it's also very patient. It really takes consistency. It takes total belief. If in the 30-day period, let's say you're on day 20 and you're trying to manifest something and it doesn't happen and you give up, well, sorry, it's not quite going to manifest, right? Because you're not really giving it your all. And those things in your life that you're the most sincere about, sincerity is so important in the law of attraction. We found that at the HeartMath Institute, which is also in the film Quantum Communication, that the heart produces a signal at least 60 times stronger than the brain. It's the true power transmitter of the body. So the amplitude or strength of your personal energy signature, whether it's your soulmate or your career, or you're looking for higher knowledge so that you can become more successful in your field of study, the stronger the intention of purity from the heart center, that you really mean this sincerely, the strength of the signal is going to be more powerful and the results are going to be more profound. But those things in your life, ask yourself a really simple question. Have you ever wanted something so deeply and badly in your life and you came from total purity and you didn't get it? Probably not. Especially if you were really consistent. And I'm not even saying there's a 30-day limit. If your purity and intention is really high, it might manifest that day. It might manifest in a week. It might even take 7 years. I'm not putting a time limit on it. But what I'm showing you is that if your mind is oscillating around, if you say you want something and then you don't believe that this technique is working, you've already canceled it out. You didn't even give it a chance. Mm-hmm. It's like we're in a rush. Or you change your mind. Okay, here's my soulmate. I want this person. And then I'm like, nah, I think I want this kind of a person. And then you go, no, I don't want that kind of a person. A month later you change your mind. Well, the universe is getting all these mixed signals from your broadcaster, right? You're like, oh my God, this guy doesn't know what he wants. So.
But see, it's interesting, the whole concept about connecting through the heart, because when I'm working with people, especially, the infamous soulmate thing, helping them to connect with what they want, one of the things that I recommend for them to do is to do things like, in your relationship, when you go to the mall with your perfect person, do you hold hands walking down the aisle? And if you do, imagine what that would be like and experience the feeling of it. And when you experience inside of yourself that feeling, it goes right into the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so your commentary about it going through the heart just totally made sense to me, because then you get to broadcast that emotional energy.
Like, let's say in The Secret, and I'm being critical here, I just say I want $100,000. Give me the cash, But I'm not saying to the universe, I'm looking for the cure for AIDS or the swine flu virus, and I really sincerely want to help people. And even though if I come up with that cure, I'm going to be very successful, obviously. See, that's a pure intention that's going to manifest wealth in your life. Or you're an architect who wants to build a building more sustainably, and that's your passion, and that's what makes you more successful. But just saying to the universe, $100,000, well, maybe if you're lucky it'll happen. But I want to know how many people saw The Secret and asked for $100,000 and got it.
And didn't get it. I don't know.
And didn't get it. I mean, did everybody get $100,000? Because then...
I wish.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work like that, people. It's much more intelligent than that. We go to school. We have master teachers that teach us knowledge. One of the things we can do to improve our skills in whatever our professions are is to improve our knowledge. If the current model doesn't have the information we need to build, to invent the next biofuel or to produce anti-gravity or zero-point energy, where did somebody first get the invention for the light bulb or the phonographic record? Thomas Edison. Where did it come from? It didn't exist before. You see, this is when you start dialoguing with the higher levels of intelligence in the universe. Your teachers are your own ability to flash genius insight with the co-creation and say, I want to build something that never existed before. And that, when you manifest that, you put it in an actual product and put it into the world marketplace, you're successful. So that's more along the lines of The Secret as I see it.
No, and I totally agree with that thought and that philosophy. I mean, just because you want something doesn't mean that you're supposed to have it, or that you're clear enough inside of yourself that it's like your brain is saying, well, I want this, and, but the rest of your body is going, well, no, not really.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if everybody just said, okay, let's give everybody $1 million, then nobody works anymore. There's nobody at the restaurant to serve you. There's nobody who's growing vegetables because we're all millionaires, and then everything dies. So it's
Wouldn't that
dynamic.
Be cool?
That would be hilarious. But so it's a lot more dynamical than that. I mean, it just depends on... So the first thing is to find what we're really purely in love with for a career or for a life partner or for even teachers and icons in our life, and to align ourselves with who we want to be our master teachers and who we want to learn from, to increase our ability to insight. And then the intelligence starts to awaken within us to become more successful. We have to become better. It's like example, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, but his light bulbs flickered. And he hired Nikola Tesla, a Yugoslav-born scientist who naturalized in America. And the first thing Tesla did is he fixed all the light bulbs and made them steady stream without flickering. But then Tesla went on to invent radio and the Tesla coil, and he invented alternating current, right? So his level to insight and flash genius was obviously incredibly, incredibly advanced. But there are many dimensions of economics, and we look at the current crisis in our world right now, and the current, there isn't a lack of money out there. There's a lack of that money flowing. And there's also this thing about the bankers and the debt, which is another thing. But the truth is there's so much money in the world, which is just an expression of a unit of energy. But there's a lot of money just sitting in bank accounts that isn't doing anything. It's just sitting there. And once an economy becomes oversaturated with a certain amount of goods, and services, you have to invent new, more progressive services. And services
so that you want to buy.
So that you want to buy, right? So because here's something new. Here's the new next thing. So now you have a reason for that energy to flow. Well, our psyche works the same way. A lot of people with depression, and I've noticed this in my own life amongst friends, is a lot of them tend to say, no, I don't want to try that. No, I don't want to try that. No, I'm not interested in that. They say no to everything. And when you have a vision of something that interests you in your mind's eye, and your lower three chakras, the base of the spine, the belly center, and the adrenal center, get excited about moving towards that vision, energy starts to flow, right? Well, money works the same way. When you have a new product which is based on a new vision, people see it in a magazine, a new type of architecture, solar panels or a zero-point energy house with a flying saucer landing in it. Well, that's something we don't have yet, so let's work towards that. And then, then with the people who want that vision to become a reality, they say that's the next thing to have, so that the money starts flowing. And so do the inventions that move us towards that. They start flowing as well.
So kind of in the same area, one of the things that the film talks about is the collective, how do I want to say it? The collective belief that we create. You watch TV or listen to the news, especially the news, and it's like, they talk about that 2% of gloom and doom, and so everybody starts walking around with that gloom and doom, and we're going to blow up, and, there's lack and shortage and need everywhere. What impact does that belief have on society in general? Because I would think if we are internalizing that as our belief, then we're projecting that, and now other people are picking it up, and it just becomes a giant domino effect.
Exactly. I mean, that is the most profound thing I think the early quantum mind explorers realized, was that whatever the media projected into the minds of the masses, they could get them to reinforce whatever that was, albeit a delusion or a liberation. And the way to keep people in prison is to make them believe a certain structure has to be a certain way, and so when you broadcast that, oh my God, we're all in debt. Oh my God, America's in debt, China's in debt, Europe is in debt. We're all in debt, and you go, well, we're in debt to who? We have more goods and resources and services than we've ever had in history. How come there isn't the money to move it? Well, that's because we believed in inflation and debt banking. So that was a belief structure. So because we believed it, we're suffering the consequences of that. And we're saying, oh, now we can't even afford to go to Mars, but we have the guys and the women at NASA who are willing to build the spaceships. We have the metal. We have the technology. But sorry, the bank says you owe us too much money, so you can't do it. So that's a whole structure that is about to collapse in the world. We've already proven that we could put ourselves perpetually in so much debt that we wouldn't be able to move. Yet the goods and services are there. So it's a hilarious situation, this thing to me.
So what kind of an impact does that, does it become self-perpetuating? And let me kind of give an example. It's like I really avoid the news, and I avoid buying into that lack mentality. Mm-hmm. However, I'm really sensitive to the energy on the planet. And I guess I feel like I end up picking up that broadcast from other people, even though it is not my belief. So do you think that other people that are sensitive, that are trying not to buy into this belief, are actually being affected by the mass conscious, I guess would be the right way to say
Well,
it?
I think they're affected much less than the people who are plugged into the matrix of world media. And I think, shows like yours and George Norrie are getting ratings so high that it's actually competition for the CNNs of the world, whose ratings are actually very low. Like 1.5 million people watch Anderson Cooper. That's nothing. There's 300 million Americans. So what else are they tuning into? Are they all watching YouTube and all these cool little videos on YouTube? What are they all plugging themselves into? And that's one of the reasons there is a shift coming in the type of films that are being produced. I'm a producer and director who makes films on consciousness, the voice, and quantum communication, and the power of the mind. I feel there's a huge void there in filmmaking and television production. It's a subject that nobody's covering, so I'm covering it, right? I found a little niche there. I also made films about UFOs because I believe that technology could bring us way beyond solar power and wind farms, and we could be exploring the stars if we opened that world up, if we really understood the value of what's there.
If we chose to value it.
Yeah. See, exactly.
We just choose to value freaking war. And
right. We
and it's
choose
like,
it.
no.
So
we
the
choose
movies
it.
that Hollywood's making more and more and more super violent films. Well, the more people who watch those and pay for them, the more they're going to make. And that's going to go into our consciousness. And even if you're not watching them, you certainly live in a world where if that's the norm, if we went from beautiful classic films, with dance musicals, and we went to, robots destroying the world and these kind of things, then the consciousness of the world is going to be affected by it, even if you're unplugged. Because that's who's surrounding you. Those are the businesses, the toys, the machines. That's what's hot. We're choosing to perpetuate more and more and more violence in our television and our film than we did in the 1950s and 60s, for sure. I mean, that's really obvious. And why is it that you make a film like What Dreams May Come and it's not making $700 million, right? So they go, well, we don't want to make any more movies like that or The Celestine Prophecy because they only made a few $1 million. And, well, it's our fault. We're not supporting it enough. So for people to support films like I'm making and What the Bleep Do We Know and other films that are trying to move us in this new direction, it's really important to get support, because if people don't support them, then we won't make them, and we're just going to be left with whatever they feed us. And if you don't,
I don't know if it's just like my weird friends, because we're all kind of like, science geek people, who actually read books and stuff. But most of them, it's like, to be honest, I have never watched an episode of Seinfeld. I've tried. I honestly have tried on several occasions and have made it through about 10 minutes. Or Scrubs or some of these shows, and then there's all the cop ones and stuff out there. But most of the people that I know that, I interact with, they really are invested in History Channel, Discovery Channel, and those stations, thank God, are bringing more and more programming out.
They are. They're starting to. I mean, I've been turned down by them. I've given them quantum communication, and it's like, what do you mean? You've got like Harvard, Yale, Berkeley, and Princeton. You've got top American researchers saying the mind's powerful. That's too scary for them. It's like, so the people who really are ready for this, who want to see the proof, and they want to know how their mind really works. I mean, William Tiller in the film gets so advanced that we measure the speed faster than light energies that the different 7 chakras transmit at. And ultimately, you get to how powerful consciousness really is when it becomes more coherent. It looks like, according to Tiller, and this is after 30 years of study, consciousness is the greatest power in the entire universe. It's responsible for creating and maintaining the orbits of the stars and the planets. In fact, it was, I'm trying to remember the name of this Catholic saint, who said, I can think of no one who would debate that it is the angels' voices and intelligence that maintains the orbits of the stars and the planets. St. Augustine, He's the one who said that. So when you have that experience yourself, I mean, what I did, I've been practicing meditation and breath therapy every single day for 30 years now. Every day, I never miss a day. And I practice an hour, sometimes 7 hours of sitting practice in the posture. And I'm a Catholic mystic. That's my personal choice. And I've had so many beautiful mystical experiences, and when they happen to you, like, how am I going to prove to people that this stuff is real, that this is the best stuff to get involved with? I mean, there's nothing better you can be doing with your time than learning that your mind is way better than an iPod. Your consciousness, if you develop it, makes your computer seem like a boring interface because you get to experience other beings in the universe directly and learn from them, and you get to expand your consciousness so deeply that you might actually feel and experience what's going on Mars right now, or Jupiter. You might actually have that experience, which is what happened to the father of trigonometry, Pythagoras. Pythagoras, the great Greek mathematician, who gave us, the formulas for resolving triangles. He said that anyone who develops these certain faculties of their mind can hear the music of all the 9 planets, and not only that, travel to these planets and meet the invisible beings, the beings that are not in physical, organic bodies like ours, that actually live there. Well, Dante, the Italian poet...
Aren't there a lot of Native American cultures that have the same belief system, that, they do certain postures or do certain prayers or ritual, that they can connect with the star beings or go to the Pleiades or Sirius or wherever?
Well, yeah, near the end, in the part 2 of Quantum Communication, we interviewed Clifford Mahudi, who is a Zuni elder. And the Zuni language in the Americas may be older than even 10,000 years. It may go back even 30,000 years. And he's saying, as an elder in his culture, that during doing these certain rituals, they were able to communicate with these star beings from the different star groups, the supernova group and the Pleiades, and actually have an exchange of presence and information. I know ideas like that sound science fiction to most people out there, but when you practice meditation every day, I guarantee you, for 8 years or more, these things are going to start to happen to you. You're going to have this experience and say, well, how come, people are having experiences like this, but the cool thing to do is to listen to heavy metal and have an iPod. I mean, you make a choice in your life. Like, you can spend 8 years learning how to become a ballerina, or get your black belt in Kung Fu, or spend 8 years and get your PhD like you did. I mean, you can't get that in 30 minutes, right? Anything of value is going to take a commitment, a true, passionate commitment. So I devoted myself every day to this practice of meditation. And what happened? Oh, my God. I could tell a million stories, and it would sound like I'm telling you science fiction stories because of the experiences I've had and the places in the universe that I've traveled to and the beings that I've met, and having the ability to see invisible angels and beings with my eyes open in the middle of the night. They come to me. I see them. One of the challenges for me is when you have an experience like that, and then again, this is a subject we took in Quantum Communication with Stanford psychologist Stanislav Ojak. He has this magical ability that when he puts his hands on a camera with real film, he is able to cause the film plane of the camera to see beyond the violet into the ultraviolet and see spiritual beings show up on the film. William Tiller studied him for over a couple of decades, I believe. Hundreds and hundreds of photographs, about a 22% anomalous factor, meaning 22% of the photos or more had spiritual phenomena appear in them. Well, for me, what's so exciting about using invisible photography techniques, because I was a professional photographer for 20 years, is they can confirm what I'm seeing spiritually in the invisible right in front of me. You can use these photographic techniques to prove that a person is not having a hallucination that isn't real. You can use a camera and get a picture of it, and it's right in front of you. So Stanislav Ojak takes this picture when Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Cher are on stage performing a musical concert, and what you can see in the photograph are beings that are very human-looking. They're floating above the stage, glowing, and they have fish tails. They're like mermaids and mermen floating in the air. They're pointing towards the musicians, and one of them appears to be dancing. I mean, you'll see this in the film, and you're like, wow, maybe other beings inspired those musicians to produce that beautiful music, or maybe they're just coming by to listen to it because it's so fantastic. You know, and we're not the only ones listening. Like, wow, and you can see it on the camera. I mean, it's really, clear enough. It doesn't take a long stretch of the imagination to see the figures in Stanislav Ojak's photographs. Now, he's a Stanford PhD psychologist, and he's telling you that he sees these beings, but he has this ability to touch a camera and cause the camera to see it too. That's unbelievable.
That's amazing.
But
wasn't it in some of his photos that he actually took pictures with the lens cap still on?
Yeah, he had, exactly. That's where it all started.
I mean, that was kind of like, hello? How does that happen?
And broad daylight with the lens cap on, he's taking pictures, and the pictures show up, which means that his consciousness is so powerful that it whatever is going through and exposing onto the film plane is what William Tiller believes subtle energy. And subtle energy is not really subtle. It's actually higher in frequency than gamma rays. And to give you an example what subtle energy ultimately means, a 10-second gamma ray burst from a distant star will release more energy into our solar system than our sun will in its 5-10 billion year lifetime. More energy than that. And consciousness is higher in frequency than that, because consciousness operates on a frequency beyond gamma rays. When Einstein won the Nobel Prize for explaining the photoelectric effect, what he explained was that the higher the frequency a particle of light or a photon was, when it interacted with matter, it would transmit its light frequency energy back into physical energy. Well, it turns out that a higher frequency light particle transmits more physical energy back into the physical universe than a lower frequency particle. So, for example, a blue photon or light particle is higher in frequency than a red one, right? So when a blue photon hits a piece of metal, it causes the electrons in that metal to move with more energy than a red photon. So if a gamma ray hits a piece of metal, it causes the electrons in that piece of metal to move much more energetically than any of the visible light spectrum. Now, if consciousness is higher in frequency than gamma rays, then it can tell the entire universe what to do, because it has more energy than even gamma rays.
Well, and it just makes me think, they said that, we started broadcasting out into the universe with the, 1935 Olympics, where Hitler was in charge.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first television broadcast. It's like, well, if we have the ability to transmit our thoughts and our feelings via subtle energy, we've been broadcasting for a lot longer than that. That's probably why no one's come around that much. It's like, those people are stupid. No.
Well, see, what we did in the film is we took Tiller's model. When you get to the heart chakra, you're transmitting information at the speed of light cubed, which is the speed of light times itself. And that gets you to the Pleiades star system which is 440 light years away. It gets there in about a quarter of a second. So what this tells us is our own bio-personal computer could be receiving a real-time message only with a quarter of a second delay from someone in that star system. So when we dream at night or when we see apparitions at night, maybe we're not delusional. Maybe a being from that star system can project itself astrally to our world. Well, here's a great experiment. This is an experiment. It's not in the movie. It's in Claude Swanson's book, The Synchronized Universe. This is an utterly mind-blowing experiment. This experiment was done with a Faraday cage, a lead cage. Inside the lead cage, they put a photomultiplier tube in a completely pitch black locked lead case. And they put a little Chinese character on a piece of paper inside the lead casing, which nobody knows what it is. And a psychic will travel out of body from a distance and go inside the lead casing to guess which letter in the Chinese alphabet there is in there. This experiment was done in China at first. When they go in, they not only guess the letter correctly, but the photomultiplier tube goes off, which means their spirit body went through the lead and got inside and caused the photomultiplier tube to light up. Now what's amazing about it is gamma rays cannot penetrate that much lead, which is proof that consciousness is higher in frequency than gamma rays. And that brings us all the way back to the proof that Max Planck, the father of quantum physics, the Nobel Prize winner, said that we must assume behind this force is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. He knew this. In 1918, he knew this, that force was higher in frequency and more powerful than all of matter because it could penetrate far deeper than even gamma rays. The most high-frequency light rays we know of are gamma rays, beyond gamma.
But, if you go to a good metaphysical bookstore, any metaphysical bookstore, they've been kind of saying that, except in different words, for, I'll just say millennia. We won't even say centuries. We're going to go for the full Monty here, millennia. Because when you talk about concepts like... But if you talk about concepts like chi, or you talk about concepts like the subtle bodies, you're talking about energy and energy movement and blah, 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 blah. They didn't have, laboratory tests, but they were definitely talking about frequency and rate of vibration, not in relationship to the electromagnetic spectrum, though.
Right. Well, see, they were talking about it, but the exciting thing now is science is catching up with it. And the beauty of science is it can show you in a repeatable and reliable model how it works. When you apply it, how it works, you're going to get results. And, you look at the levitating saints of India and the levitating Catholic saints, all these miracles are explainable by the power of consciousness. And finally, Tiller says, you say with Tiller, how come every time we have a thought, we're not able to move objects and things like that if consciousness is so powerful? Well, the difference is there's a difference between the brain and the mind that Max Planck is talking about, the mind of the universe. What has to happen in order for us to produce these miracles is our minds have to become more coherent, which means more harmonic, more perfectly harmonized. And when our minds, through the practice of meditation, get much more synchronistic and in perfect harmony, we're able to tap into more and more of the mind of the universe. Our brain may say, glass levitate in front of me. Well, that's your brain. Now, to get your brain to harmonize and become coherent with the mind of the universe, that's another thing. That takes practice. A lot of practice.
David, we have a minute left.
Yeah.
Just to let you know.
Well, I just want people to know to go to voiceentertainment.net. That's where you can get quantum communication right now, and a lot of spiritual bookstores carry it, so you can just ask your store, where it is on the shelf, or if they have to order it for you. So please go see the movie Quantum Communication, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and so people can also go to the justenergyradio.com webpage, and there's a link to David's site where you can get the movie, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like that. So I was not able to play the halfway through commercials, and so that's why just don't even ask. Don't ask, okay? And so any last words before we need to go?
Well, the last thing I wanted to say is I'm trying to create a petition of PhDs and master degrees or anybody with any kind of science degree or medical degree to petition the release of all the data which proves that consciousness is should be added to the four forces.
Cool. Thank you, David, for coming back on. Next movie comes out, you just call me. We'll get you lined up to come back on.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Louise.
All right.
Take care.
That's David Sereda, his movie Quantum Communication, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
Sensitive to energy? Want to explore the world beyond the five senses? Looking for a new career as an alternative healthcare practitioner? Then the Institute of Applied Energetics, Medical Intuition, and Energy Medicine training programs may be right for you. Our comprehensive curriculum provides students with a deep understanding of how to detect, evaluate, and transform the subtle body, as well as techniques for correcting energetic imbalances that may underscore a person's ability to experience radiant health. So if you are sensitive to energy, contact the Institute of Applied Energetics right away. Be a catalyst for changing the way healthcare is done around the world. Visit www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and start your new career today. How would you like to live long and enjoy great health? How about creating solid bones and whiter teeth, strengthen your heart and eyes, and have radiant, youthful-looking skin? There is an ancient health and longevity secret that has been used for millennia in Egypt, India, and China that can help you achieve this. For the first time in the modern world, Pearlsium brings ancient wellness secrets to you. For more information about Pearlsium, visit www.ancientpearl.com. Before we get back to the show, I want to thank all of you for tuning into Just Energy Radio this evening. Many of the people I've helped over the years were listeners just like you. If you're at a junction in your life, don't stand alone at this important time. Call me or send me an email. We can set up a private consultation so that you too can experience wholeness in your life. To find out more about the services I offer, visit soulhealer.com.